And welcome back to WGN TV Political Report. With less than a month to go in the spring session, many in the education realm are waiting to see if lawmakers can finally agree on a plan to give Chicago an elected school board. The Illinois House has passed a bill to create a fully elected 21-member board. Chicago voters would get to pick board members in 2023 and 2027. School board employees and contractors would be prohibited from running. A similar plan has been passed in the House 4 times, but it's yet to get approval in the Senate. It's been backed by the Chicago Teachers Union, outspoken critics of Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Since moving from the campaign trail to City Hall, Lightfoot has called the 21-person proposal unwieldy, instead throwing her support behind a new hybrid plan that would keep the majority of the board under mayoral control. 2 members of the 7-seat board would be elected in 2026. 2 years later, the board increases to 11 members, with 3 being picked by voters. Candidates would be required to serve on a local school council. The entire model expires in 2032 unless lawmakers do something. Well, last week, Senate President Don Harmon signaled a potential turning point in the debate. He's asked supporters of each bill to negotiate a compromise, starting with a hybrid model that transitions to a fully elected school board eventually. Harmon also said he's committed to passing something before the spring is over. But this week, the governor said Mayor Lightfoot hasn't reached out.
I'm in favor of an elected school board. I think that the legislature and the people on both sides of whether we should have a hybrid or a fully elected board have gotten together, it seems, to come to some compromise. I welcome a compromise, and certainly I'll be looking forward to what the legislature produces.
So what happens next? Anybody's guess. And my next guest has been a longtime backer of the fully elected school board. Jitu Brown is the board president of the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization and the national director of the Journey for Justice Alliance. Jitu, good to see you. It's been a while. Welcome to the program.
Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. You look well.
So this process has been going on for like 5 years, elected versus appointed. What gives you hope that ultimately a compromise can be reached when the two sides still seem so far apart?
Well, I think the reason we believe that we're going to be victorious is because the people of Chicago have not demanded mayoral control light. They've demanded an elected school board. We were the organizers of both referendums that indicated that 90% of Chicago said they wanted an elected school board. I remember and have lived through the pain of those parents, thousands of parents, begging an appointed school board under mayoral control to understand that our schools aren't failing, but our schools are inequitable. And that school board under mayoral control was deaf, tone deaf to those tears. But I felt those tears. I sat on local school councils that were under-resourced. And I think that the proposal for a hybrid, I want to be clear, while it's cloaked in racial justice language, Paul, it's nothing but the same thing that Rahm Emanuel began to bend on. These proposals come from the school privatization agenda, from the Eli Broad Institute. These are not proposals for a pathway to democracy. Eli Broad in his institute said the biggest enemy of school reform, which means charter expansion, school closings, turnarounds, and things like that, are elected school boards. That's why billionaires all over the country have waged war on school board elections, like in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We're saying that if democracy is good enough for parents in Northbrook and Schaumburg and Oak Brook and Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and San Antonio, Texas, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, then it's good enough for parents in Chicago.
Well, Jitu, let me push back on that a little bit, because obviously people watching the show are on both sides of this equation. So let me try and represent some arguments they might present to you. The push for an elected school board, among other things, I think you'd agree, is about getting some proper representation of various constituencies, right? And trying to ensure that people get elected that represent the district. But there's no guarantee that people will vote in or would vote in a diverse group of people. Aren't you more assured of diversity and variety of areas with appointees?
Absolutely not, because, and I appreciate the question, because with appointees, who are they accountable to? They're accountable to who appointed them. Mayor Emanuel appointed the CEO and the school board, but remember, it was the Commercial Club of Chicago that drove the education agenda in Chicago. They released the report that inspired Renaissance 2010 in 2004. Democracy is not perfect. We're not saying that an elected representative school board is a panacea, but we are saying that it gives us a shot at equity. It gives, Chicago remains one of the most inequitable school districts in the United States. Children on Diversey and Ashland have a completely different academic reality than children that live on 44th and Cottage Grove. And this school board has been tone deaf to that. And I want to also say, Paul, we should beware the messenger, because groups like Stand for Children, groups like Kids First, these are AstroTurf groups that were funded by billionaires in order to push privatization agendas. Kids First used to be the Renaissance Fund, who was the director was a man named Philip Hampton. The Renaissance Fund's primary job was to go around to Black schools and convince Black parents why their schools should close. The public rebelled and they rebranded themselves, but their mission has not changed.
Well, G2, again, I want to, because we have limited time, so I want to be sure I get so many issues with this. So another concern, perhaps to avoid some of what you're talking about, a loyalty to a mayor who appoints them, one of the things we don't have now is a requirement that the city council would have to confirm or approve or even interview these appointees. Would that resolve it? Would that give us the kind of democracy and diversity we're looking for if we involve the entire city council in a confirmation process?
No, sir, because you have to think about this. I mentioned some other cities, Paul. San Antonio, Texas has a fully elected school board, right? There are several major cities, San Diego, California, major cities in the United States that have well-functioning school boards. If the school board can raise your taxes, Paul, then we as taxpayers have the right to hold them accountable to the policies they set. But when you don't have democracy, that's when you have backdoor political deals. That's when you have corrupt CEOs who end up going to federal prison, right? So I think it's very important that we understand that the hybrid model is nothing but mayoral control light. It is not a pathway to democracy.
So let me ask you this. One of the things that I want to ask you about the impact, of course, we've got lots of change now at the top of CPS, right? Janice Jackson gone, 2 deputies to her gone. How might that changes at the top influence the status and the direction of the negotiations on this issue of an elected school board?
I think that whoever the next CEO of Chicago Public Schools is, first, it should be a superintendent. It shouldn't be a CEO. Let's be clear on that. Janice Jackson was by far the most qualified person, really the first person who was really qualified to be a leader of a school district. But remember, we had Arnie Duncan, who never taught a day in his life, right? We had people who were agents of the Eli Broad Training Institute. They were not people that were teachers and then principals and then, moved up the chain. So I think the negotiations need to be that the mayor needs to understand that the public is speaking. You can do all the slick commercials you want, Paul. She can do all the slick commercials she wants. She can dress it up in racial justice language, but equity begins with governance. And it does not begin with people's benevolence. It begins with governance. We have to have the right to hold institutions accountable for the policies they set. And if we don't have that, then what you really have, my friend, is taxation without representation.
And you've made that point, and others have, that parents deserve a voice. They're paying taxes. They should have a voice. And let's accept that as true. But here's the thing, and maybe I'm a little bit of a cynic when it comes to local elections. It's like voting for judges, G2. How many people either skip those races on their ballot and or walk in and vote for names of, based on, gender issues or race issues or whatever, just based on the name. People really often don't know the players who are running at that level of local election, a school board, a judge, that kind of thing. So what kind of guarantee is that you get qualified people that you want to see in those positions?
Well, I think that the onus is on those of us that believe in democracy to make sure that we have what you call a conscious constituency. Chicago has a gift. The gift that Chicago has is it probably has the largest concentration of community-based organizations in the country, right? Historic groups that are based in communities. Unfortunately, we've never had a platform or a voice because the privatization agenda has dominated it. And Paul, I want to add this. You know, the Hippocratic Oath says, first do no harm. In public education, that should be our motto. How many black children have been pushed out of the city of Chicago over the last 20 years? So when Chicago Public Schools talks about its growth, they ignore the fact that 50,000 black children have been purged from the system because of school privatization, right? They ignore the fact that the alternative school system has exploded, and many children's primary school is an alternative school, right? So I think that we have to also recognize that mayoral control has been a failure, all right, in regards to making our system more equitable. So I want to say this, we're perfectly willing, and I'm on a negotiating team, so we're willing to sit down with the mayor's people, but we're not new to this game. We've been fighting this fight since 2006. I was passing out petitions at the Bud Billiken Parade in 2006 for an elected school board.
Right.
I sat on the LSC at Diet for a decade and watched that school sabotage.
G.T. Brown,
so no, we want democracy.
All right, I hear you. We're going to see what the legislature does. Listening to you is easy to do because that lion behind you just adds strength to what you're saying. Thank you, G.T. Brown, for being with me. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Good to see you.
Be well. All right, we're going to take one more break. We'll be back with more Political Report after this.